going crazy underneath me. I think he got a whiff of catnip. August, you okay? Ah! Hey friends, my name is Leah and I'm the Redheaded Witch. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about shadow work. Shadow work is one of the most common questions that I get asked on my platform. I won't get to everything in this video, so as always, please extend your research outside of my channel. So without further ado, grab your cup of coffee or tea, whatever you're drinking. Today I am drinking some coffee and using my Iceland mug, which my husband gifted to me, not when we went to Iceland together. We hadn't even met yet, actually, when he gifted this to me. Cute little story, but love this mug. It's got a little chip on it, but that's okay. So if you are just starting your spiritual journey, you may or may not have already heard the term shadow work. I'm gonna go ahead and say, when it comes to shadow work, you do not need to be a witch in order to do it. I'm also gonna say I am not by any means a professional into shadow work. And like I said before, I just want to encourage you all to extend your research outside of my channel, speaking from my personal experience and from my understanding. So shadow work, where to begin? What is shadow work? So the shadow self is described as the side that we tend to reject. A great tip to kind of get to know what the research has been done in terms of shadow work. I actually have a book here called The Undiscovered Self by Jung. So it is a great little textbook of his written essays regarding the shadow self. It is $10. I got it at Barnes & Noble. Again, I will leave this in the description below so that you can check it out if you're interested in reading some of his work. Otherwise, researching online his name has been helpful as well. This side is filled with beliefs, desires, wants, needs that at some point in our life were deemed to be unnecessary or not appropriate, whether by family, friends, relationships, or society. So when we say do shadow work or I am doing shadow work, what we are essentially doing is shining light on these darker parts of ourselves. It's absolutely nothing to be ashamed about because every single person, every single human being has a shadow self. So what does a shadow look like? So a shadow can look like, I am a perfectionist, and asking yourself, how does this reflect in my life? How does it reflect in my work ethic, in my relationships with my coworkers? How does it reflect in my own relationships? How does it reflect in my relationship with myself? By addressing these things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves, this is when we can dive into some deep healing, because these parts of ourselves stem from somewhere. Somebody in our life said this is not okay, rejected that part of yourself, and you suppressed it deep within. Coffee break? This is when our inner child healing comes into play, because most often when we discover these shadow parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily like, we dig beneath the surface of that and find a fear or an experience that resulted in us to have this characteristic or trait. So for example, if I am a perfectionist is one of your shadows, and you start to dig beneath that and say, wow, I had a parent who expected excellent grades from me. I was on every sport team. You know, you had a lot of pressure growing up. That might be why you tend to have this trait of being a perfectionist. And where that might show up in your life could be, well, I am not performing at my highest, good at work. I'm not good enough. And you see how it kind of like spirals into, a lot of beliefs about ourselves that just are simply not true. Why do we bother doing shadow work if it's so hard to do? Especially when we're on a spiritual journey. What benefit does it have? So, like I've said before, you don't have to be a witch or practitioner to do shadow work. Anybody is able to do shadow work. The perks of doing shadow work is that by recognizing these parts of ourselves, we are getting closer to our most authentic self, our truest desires, what we're really wanting in life. And so when we go into spell crafting, we're essentially thinking of it from a deeper place and not very surface level. I hope I'm making sense here when I try to explain this. So how do I get started? Is the number one question I get asked a lot. My best advice is the only advice that I can give you, and that's from my personal experience and how I approached it. Well, did I know that I have been doing shadow work for quite some time now, thanks to my lovely therapist. I didn't know the term shadow work. I actually did not know the term shadow work until therapy. I recognized that therapy is not accessible to everyone. And it wasn't accessible to me for a really long time. Because trust me, I would have gone a long time ago if I had the opportunity. I always want to recommend professional mental health help because, like me, I had a really difficult time getting past a certain point within my shadow work. I had recognized these traits and patterns that I had developed as coping mechanisms from my own personal trauma experiences, but I did not know how to get past how to change them, how to actually do the work. It was a very uncomfortable position to be in. I recognized that I needed help. I needed someone from the outside who could help me work through this. This is also where, if you are in a partnership and you are trying to do shadow work, sometimes we want to lean on them and be like, oh, like this is what I need, and hoping that they will meet that need. But shadow work is about you. It is about meeting your needs, your desires, getting into who you are and not what anyone or anything else says you are or needs you to be. We will get into how shadow work plays a role in our relationships in the next video. So obviously, one of the ways that you can get started on shadow work is to grab a journal. Grab a journal that is specifically dedicated to your shadow work. I like to keep mine separate from anything else just because I want the energy to stay within this book, and it's also a book that I can take with me to therapy. There are many prompts online in regards to shadow work. Luckily for us, because it's such a hot topic right now that a lot of people are sharing their experiences and sharing their prompts. If you don't already and want to join a safe witchy community, I do have a Discord with my friend Hannah. She's like a sister to me at this point, from Simply Witched, and I will be sure to leave that Discord link in the description below so that you can join it. We do have a channel specifically for shadow work that is a great resource. We post shadow work prompts on the daily, or at least attempt to, because our lovely mods are just on it constantly. And shout out to you all if you are watching this right now. I love you and appreciate you and everything that you do, and I just love that community so much. I actually cannot believe that we're over 800 people now, so that's amazing. So what to keep in mind as you are going through your shadow work journey. And these are things that I really have to keep in mind for myself as well, because when it comes to I don't know, everyone approaches shadow work differently. I do it very much when I am triggered in that moment, because I find it easier to work through it rather than trying to sit there and think of a situation. It's very much triggered basis. So when I'm in that moment, I grab my book and I just write out all of the feelings that I'm feeling. It's just kind of like it's like kind of vomiting all over on the page, just be like, this is what I'm feeling. Taking a step back and looking at it and being like, okay, so this is what's really going on. By discovering like the deeper level of it, you're able to recognize like, what do you need right now? You know, who is showing up in this moment and why is it a trigger? By going to therapy, I was able to work through so much of exactly like certain moments that were triggering for me. Again, this is why inner child healing comes into a play, because a lot of these beliefs that we have about ourselves, they stem from our childhood or just from society or experiences that we had in relationships. On top of going to therapy, some of you know that I also started EMDR therapy. So I will do a separate video about EMDR therapy and my journey so far, because it is something that a lot of people have asked me about. It is something that I have started to do with my new therapist. I have two. It has been super helpful. For those who don't know what EMDR therapy is, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I thought the last word was remedy for some reason, but it's reprocessing, which makes way more sense, because essentially what you are doing is you are feeling the suppressed feelings from traumatic experiences. So if you're like me, I experienced trauma and I have PTSD, and because of that I have a lot of suppressed memories and feelings that I found really difficult to resurface in order for me to do shadow work, for me to heal from those experiences and find peace and move on. Obviously, shadow work plays a huge role in this, because it's also about taking accountability. Taking accountability for your actions, your mistakes, making peace with it. I found in my healing journey so far, nothing heals from punishing yourself. We can sit here and just, you know, smack her palm against the forehead and be like, why did I do that? And try and like sit there and mull it over time and time again. And I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. In order to help me work myself out of it, it was like EMDR therapy really helped. It gave me the release that I really needed, and it has been super beneficial. Shadow work has also been super beneficial in my life in general. Come to terms with a lot of things about who I am, and regardless of that, I still love myself. I am still a good person, and recognizing that I am worthy of love. I am worthy of a loving marriage, of a successful life, just as everybody else is. I think that's what I feel like for me, that is what shadow work is about. Coming into your own. See, on this journey, just give yourself some grace, give yourself some compassion. If you're feeling stuck, I obviously, you know, always turn to a safe space, which for me is therapy. If you have a safe friend, ask them if they have space to hold for you. If you have a partner, ask them if they have space to hold for you. I've been so lucky to have a partner who has been going through their own shadow work as well. I will make that video right after this one about how shadow work plays a role into a conscious relationship. And it's a beautiful thing to be going through that journey together, but also separately. So if you are interested in shadow work prompts, I highly encourage you to join me and Hannah's Discord to check out some daily prompts. Again, sometimes just even Googling them is super helpful, or finding some social media accounts that support shadow work and sharing prompts. There are so many resources out there for you, and I will be sure to include some in the description as well. Thank you so much for holding this space with me and talking about shadow work. Thanks, friends, and I will see you next week.